apologize, we had business to conduct. But thank you for coming. Okay, at this time, I'll recall the Ramapo Central School District Board of Education meeting. Sorry. Board of Education meeting Tuesday, December 1st, 2015. To order, the time is now 8:40. 8:43? 7:40. Sorry. Long night. Feels like we've been. Okay, I'm sorry. Will you all please stand?
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, student report is Rachel. How are you?
How are you?
Great.
How was your Thanksgiving?
Awesome.
Everybody, Thanksgiving?
Not enough food.
Not enough Anyway, so in addition to Thanksgiving, hockey season started for the high school. And so we started off our first game and we beat Helen 3-2. That's good. And Suffern Sports now has a Twitter at Suffern Sports. So you guys can all follow that. You have Twitter. So this Thursday at 7 p.m. is the financial aid night. And that's going to be for parents of seniors who are applying to colleges and need financial aid, which is most people who are applying to colleges. Also, this Friday is the last day for seniors to get their senior portraits for the yearbook. And this Saturday, there's going to be a holiday parade in downtown Suffern. And a little tidbit of information, I mean, obviously our marching band is awesome, we're going to be in there, but our honor society, which I work with, is making a float. So that's
We'll put you in a great spot at college. Come sign on the walk over, right?
practice your way, friends.
Absolutely.
I will be on it. No, and the floats are a different one. But yeah. Anyway, so next Wednesday, the National Honor Society is having its induction. I would love to see one of you guys there. I will be being inducted. That's how you say that. Next Thursday, December 10th, Suffern High School will be hosting the forensic speech and debate competition all day. And in terms of the holidays starting, in addition to the parade, Heroes and Cool Kids is having a toothpaste, toothbrushes, and deodorant drive. So there's some worthy causes. In addition to our Honor Society having a holiday boutique as they usually have, selling little homemade gifts. And I'm president of the Fort Suffern Kids, you know that Friends of Rachel Club with Rachel's Challenge, and you've heard of the initiative Giving Tuesday. We're kind of implementing that during the month of December. So it's exciting, the holidays are coming, and Suffern High School is feeling it. So, yeah, have a good week, or 2 weeks.
Okay, at this time, Chair is in a motion to accept the minutes. 1.08. To accept the minutes of the special meeting of November 12th, 2014, as stated. Second, Mark, second by Teresa. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Okay, 1.09, at this time, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as so stated for the regular meeting of November 17th, 2015. Mr. Long?
Second.
Who was that?
Me.
I wish you could give us all this.
Maybe.
I apologize. Did I get a second? Maureen. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Oppositions? So moved. Okay, this time I will turn the mic over to Dr. Asher.
We have a special guest here tonight, Bill Villanova, and he is here to recognize Dan McCarter and the orchestra, and for one reason, and then I'll have an opportunity to recognize Dan for another reason.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Adams and the school board for allowing me the opportunity this evening to acknowledge some very special people. My name is Bill Villanova. On October 1st, 2015, a very special ceremony was held here in Rockland that allowed the Rockland veteran community and veterans from throughout the tri-state area to come together and provide 3 veterans their final place of rest. We planned this ceremony for almost 1 year, and while each person, each veteran, and each organization had their mission to carry out at a specific time, there was a special group of young men and women that stepped up at a late hour and provided this ceremony with a score that helped shape and complete this very special day. Everyone, and I mean everyone, commented on the orchestra and how professional they were. This, of course, was well orchestrated by the maestro himself, Dan McCarter. What else can I say, other than how thankful I am to have had Dan McCarter agree to participate and dedicate his time, along with the Suffern Chamber Orchestra, to our veteran community. At this time, I'll be brief, but I'll read the names of the students and ask them and Dan McCarter to join me so I may present by. If you're here as a student, as a musician, Dan Carter, please come forward. Eugene Ha, Phoebe Lackenauer, Maggie Hodeling, Juliet Van Schaik, Anya Lukowski, Anders Lewis, Melanie Sadoff, Daniel Manos, Ava Sobanya, is that one right? I hope. Brooke Greenstein, Carolyn Fernandez, Vivian Zahn, Nithya Kumar, Molly Ferguson, Samantha Donato, let's see there, Morgan Wolf, Tyler Vo, Michelle Chen, Kytrona Keen, Umaima Chamar, Kaylin Chi, Isabel Chi, Michael Lepori, John Ho, Ryan So, Adina Asawakul Paiwu, I hope I got that one right. Ben Guccione, Will Adwar, Jeremy Doman, Enrica Lee, Sarah Chen, Stephanie Chen, Dan Dowling, Nikita Torres, Tiffany Rivera, and Jeremy Blair. It would have been easy for me to say the Suffern Chamber Orchestra, but it is more important that I mention their names for how special they are. And these names are going to be given to the veterans as well, so they can be recognized at their meetings. So, give me 1 second. Dan, how are you? I'm Bill. Hello, pleasure to meet you. Good to see you. Okay. So I have a plaque here that says, in grateful appreciation to the Suffern High School Chamber Orchestra, your presence and the music you provided on October 1st, 2015, as we laid to rest 3 brave veterans, allowed us to provide these military honors with the highest respect, dignity, and honor to these veterans that these veterans so justly deserve. We will be forever grateful to your contribution presented on December 1st, 2015 by Wanamaker and Carlo Funeral Home, the Rockland County Veterans, and the Missing in America Project. Thank you. Stay with me for 1 more second because I have a special plaque just for Dan McCarter. And it says, in grateful appreciation to Dan McCarter, your willingness to quickly assist with the ceremony and provide music on October 1st, 2015, as we laid to rest 3 brave veterans, allowed us to provide these military honors with the highest respect, dignity, and honor these veterans so justly deserve. Dan and the orchestra are a true asset to this community, to the school district, and to the veteran community. And Dan, I can't thank you enough.
just to add on to that, during the Veterans Day weekend, I saw Dan in church, and he was decked out in a suit, and Dan's always well dressed, but I don't often see him with a suit on, and I just leaned over and said, "What do you have a suit on for?" So Dan, if you would, please share what you did that day and brought a lot of pride and respect for our school.
Some senior members of the Chamber Orchestra on that Sunday performed at a special breakfast for the Rockland County Veterans. I'm not sure exactly what the association was, but it was through State Senator David Carlucci organized the breakfast. They presented the Rockland County Veteran of the Year with a plaque, and we also got to enjoy a speech by Nita Lowy, our representative. So
It was early Sunday morning.
it was. What time did we start playing? I believe it was like 8:30 in the morning. But the kids got free food, so that was good.
Thank you, Dan. One other comment is tonight's the last board meeting for Kelly Seibert. He's accepted a position in another school district across the river. And Kelly's been with our school district for about 4.5 years and has done extraordinary work in some very difficult, challenging times, budget-wise. And I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Kelly for all that he's done for our school district over the last 4.5 years, and I wish him nothing but the very best moving forward.
Okay, public participation, 1.11, public participation on action items only. Those are items listed above, over on my head or to my right, 2.01 through 2.12. 2.01 through 2.12, this is only for those items. The portion of the meeting will last no longer than 30 minutes. If you would like to speak on any of those items, please approach the podium. Make sure the mic is working. State your names, address, school affiliation, or what have you. There's 3 minutes to speak. Please address your remarks to the president of the board. And, again, as I reiterate, at every meeting, we do not necessarily go back and forth with conversation at this meeting. It is a business meeting held in public, not necessarily a public meeting, but we do want to hear what the members of the public do have to say. So at this time, I would open the floor to public participation. Okay, seeing none, I'll try to keep that version of my speech short. Seeing none, I will close that portion of the meeting. We are at action items. Action items are 2.01 through 2.12. Nobody's asked for anything to be pulled, correct? Okay, so I would like to use a consent agenda with respect to those items, 2.01 through 2.12.
So moved.
Motion to accept those, Mr. Long, who is the second? Ms. Monahan. Use your last name this time. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? None. None. Thank you. And we have administrative reports. The first administrative report will be from 2 of our school nurses, I believe 2. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol Diamond, and I am the school nurse at R.P. Connor Elementary, as well as the nurse coordinator for the school district. My colleague is Bonnie Cholino. She is the nurse at the middle school, the high school. She was the nurse at the middle school.
Now the high school.
We wanted to give you a little snippet of what a day in the life of a school nurse is about. And so we have a PowerPoint presentation for you, as well as some information that we wanted to share. So, okay, I'm a nurse, not a technology person, so do I point this at? Okay, just that. Over the years, years, and I've been with the district 21 years, I just started my 19th full-time year, there has been a dramatic increase in the acuity of student and childhood illnesses. School nursing involves a lot more than Band-Aids. We never know what's going to walk through our doors, so every day is different. It's exciting, it's an adventure, you're right, and sometimes it's a challenge. We are very resourceful, and we have a very broad knowledge base, and it's really important. That's why when it comes to recruiting nurses, when one of us has retired, we need somebody that has that expertise in that area. Bonnie, feel free to chime in. Okay. So we manage a lot of health issues, whether it's diabetes, asthma, life-threatening allergies, mental and emotional illness. We wear many hats. Sometimes we're the mom, sometimes we're the nurse, sometimes we're the mom, sometimes we're the psychologist, but we're also liaison between school and home. We make referrals to parents, whether it comes to a medical issue or something that's going on socially or emotionally, either within the family or with the student. Even in terms of medication, and the list does go on and on. Often, and parents today, it's so different than when I started with the district 21 years ago. Parents today, a lot of times we're dealing with households where both parents have to work. It's a necessity today. So in all fairness, kids are often sent, and I'm in an elementary, Bonnie's again in high school. Kids are sent to school. Kids often get sick in school, and sometimes kids are sent to school not well, only because the parent has no alternative but to send their child to school so that they can go out and earn a living. That presents challenges on its own. But parents have a right, and kids, they expect their child's health and well-being will be safeguarded while they're at school. We promote the health of the students through nursing assessment, taking health histories from the parents, sometimes from the student in Bonnie's case, and reviewing symptoms and helping them to be as independent as possible in managing their medical conditions, whatever they may be. We provide both routine and emergent care for students and also for staff, and try as much as possible to prevent life-threatening situations. The National Association of School Nurses defines school nursing as a specialized practice of professional nursing that enhances the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievement of students. To that end, school nurses facilitate positive student responses to normal development, promote health and safety. We actually make it possible for kids to manage whatever health issues they're dealing with, be it chronic or, just, a cold or a respiratory infection or something of that kind, so that they can stay in school to reach whatever academic success they may have. A school nurse is defined as a registered professional nurse. Why is it important that our students have access to a school nurse? Again, we provide emergency care as needed, plan for health-related emergencies, provide nursing assessment, establish care and medication regimes with students, and educating not only the student but also the parents. One of the greatest values is the ability of our ability to perform assessments. Nursing assessment determines if the child is experiencing a mild asthma or progressive respiratory distress, or even if they're having a life-threatening allergy or just something mild. We can make the difference between treatment or a rapidly progressing coma for a student, as an example with diabetes. And Bonnie and I were just discussing this before. Having always been in an elementary setting, currently we have 11 diabetics in the high school, which that in and of itself is a challenge. When I started at Connor, I had 6 diabetics in one grade. I felt like I could have been the nurse just for those kids because there's such a divergence. But at that point, it was K to 6. And it's so important, and we all feel similarly, that you treat students and allow them to develop at their own pace, to manage their care independently. So when they get to the middle school, when they get to the high school, whether it's diabetes or anything else, that they're able to manage. Because as I say to parents all the time, we're not going to be with them through their lives. They're going to have to manage this. This is going to be a lifelong issue. What do we do as school nurses? We triage school health, student health concerns. We assess the physical and emotional issues. We often reach out to parents and share with them. Obviously, it's different for Bonnie than for myself. But whether it's that the child has gained a lot of weight and we're concerned, or whether they're underweight, or whether there's a growth issue, whether they're bringing medication to school and we make it clear that we need medications, it's a New York State law. We don't make the laws, we just try to abide by those laws. And we often counsel students on health and emotional issues, and again, it's different on the high school level versus the elementary. We administer medications on a daily and as-needed basis. As I said, we refer health issues to healthcare providers, and often we are not only liaison between school and home, but also between school and the medical provider. We are mandated to do certain screenings by New York State. There's vision and hearing. We do scoliosis, primarily at the beginning of the school year, which Dr. Adams and I discussed in August. We have immunization survey that's due, and we need to comply with that, not only as each individual building, but also as a district. We could be severely fined if we weren't in compliance, but also, absolutely, and just every other year, we have the BMI, which has to do with height and weight and percentages. So we monitor health appraisals, and Bonnie in the high school and the middle school nurses also do sports physicals on an ongoing basis so that our athletes can be in compliance and that they can also participate in sports. We write emergency and individualized healthcare plans, and again, we teach students to manage their healthcare concerns as independently as possible. And I mean, in some cases, it starts early on. So when I first started at Connor, I had a student that needed to be catheterized 3 times a day. She was in kindergarten at the time. She was a special ed student. Obviously, I geared my teaching toward whatever it is I felt she could handle at that time. But my goal was that when she got to be in 6th grade, and I was passing her on to those middle school nurses, she was going to be independent in her care and be able to do that care in any situation. So, thanks. Not always as effective, but we try. Okay, only a nurse can administer Diastat for an emergency care of seizures, and now the laws are changing as far as, that's another thing. A lot of things have changed in New York State, and they change ongoing. So one of the things, and when this slide was prepared, only a nurse could administer epinephrine for life-threatening allergy, but now that's no longer the case. And we are now going to be, we have standing orders for an EpiPen, God forbid a staff member or a student had an allergic reaction. But now New York State is saying that we can train any staff member that is willing, that is not medically based, to administer an EpiPen and give them the signs and symptoms. So we're in the process of developing those protocols with this school attorney. And that should be emergent, hopefully, just after the first of the year. And then as school nurses, we meet monthly and we're trying to develop some protocol for how we would keep a record of who was trained. Only a school nurse can perform state mandated health screenings, and again, some of those screenings are vision and hearing, scoliosis, the sports physicals, and develop and implement emergency healthcare plans, administer a nebulizer treatment to a student struggling with asthma, and also helping them to recognize when they might need that, which on the elementary level is a little more challenging. And provide a safe and healthy environment for all students. So as school nurses, we're making a difference as we care for New York children and youth.
Bonnie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
11 type 1 diabetics in high school. In high school, we have over 1,500 students. I did work in the middle school for 10 years, so I feel I have a pretty good sense of what both buildings have. Carol's comment as far as helping our children to become independent with their health issues. They're referencing students with chronic health issues. It starts in the elementary school for many of these students. The absolute biggest breaking point or point of most anxiety for parents is the transition to the middle school. They're going from their little small cocoon to a big building, and just the children, the independence and so forth, and you can watch the growth over the 3 years that they are there in the middle school, particularly with the diabetics, because I happen to follow a large group of diabetics from the middle school to the high school 1 year. I went up with 6 of them. I was a new freshman too when I went to the high school, and they're all so just to even see, I have had these children since 6th grade, and the growth and independence, it's very rewarding to see that. We also have in the high school, when we're discussing life-threatening, we have students with food allergies, feasting allergies. We have unit lunch, which can be a nightmare for some students who have a major food allergy. They have to know how to manage their care, what their signs and symptoms are. It can be a challenge at times, but most of them have learned to navigate through that. We also have a number of students, particularly in the high school at this point. I can't speak to the middle or elementary schools, but with a condition known as polar hearing, which is another situation. God forbid we ever have to vacate the building. If it's cold and damp, we had to come up with emergency care plans for these students to provide a safe place. There are 2 of us. We have 2 go bags. We had a really, and then we did a walkthrough with the students. The last fire drill we had for the season, we extended the fire drill and did a mock drill for these particular students, because we were going into the cold weather, and if we would have that, we wanted that to be fresh in their minds. We have a lot with the sports. We have a lot of teams. A lot of our teams have done well in the fall, and hopefully everyone will have a good winter season. I don't know, what else can we talk about?
Well, the only thing I wanted to say is, in addition, New York State continues to change the mandates. So New York State, the immunizations have changed twice in the last 2 years, which has been a challenge. And they're changing again for next year. And we try to remain within compliance, obviously. But the other thing is that there's a product, it was called Aubi-Q, and it was an epinephrine product that was like an EpiPen. And it was amazing because it would talk to you. So it was great for the layperson, and unfortunately, there's been a major recall, so we needed to communicate with all our parents as far as that. And then, as I shared with Dr. Adams, I was able to get all the nurses trained in Narcan administration, and what that meant in addition was that we each got a kit. So now, in speaking to Bonnie, we have never had to administer it in the high school, although there have been students who have come to school impaired. But it's not only about the students in our district, but also about staff and visitors that come into the building. So we're prepared, and I just felt great that I could get all the nurses trained. So, does anyone have any questions or comments for us?
Any questions?
Sure. Great job that you guys do in the schools. Is there any area of support that you feel could be enhanced, or anything that, resources that you feel are lacking that you need?
Well, we could use more subs, but it's because of the economy and the way things are today. I mean, years ago, as I said, when I started with the district 21 years ago, not all of us worked, and not all of us, some of us were stay-at-home moms, or you had something part-time. I mean, today, it's a little more challenging, but it's ongoing. I work with Mr. Walker, I work with his secretary, we have an ongoing ad. Other than that, I mean, again, we try to support each other and we try to be resourceful. But thank you for that, and if there ever is, I'll feel free to, reach out.
Teresa?
I just wanted to say, it's never a bad time to thank a nurse. My son graduated, he had both of you, plus a couple other nurses in different buildings, and you can't downplay what they do enough. Or talk about what they do enough. You can't downplay that, because you create emergency plans with administration, you make sure kids can get out of the building safely, you make sure they have everything they need, and we can't thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any questions?
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry. Do you have a question?
Carol?
We have one more question.
Carol?
I serve with Carol on the SHAC committee, so I appreciate the work you do on that as well. And of course, Bonnie, and, taking care of my kids through middle and high school, so thank you. But I want to ask, in terms of the EpiPen training, so Narcan, all teachers are required by law?
No, not
But we are hoping to train all staff, you're saying? I heard you saying?
EpiPen training, not Narcan.
Narcan is not, so what's the proportion of staff that we're training on Narcan?
Well, we only train,
Only our nurses.
right now, we only train the nurses. Bonnie and I were trained in July, and then we were retrained when we got everyone trained on November 3rd for superintendent's conference. Narcan can be administered by a layperson, but it's not, like, I could bring somebody in and train whoever would be interested who's non-medical.
Right.
That's doable.
So my question is, will we open that to staff who wishes to be trained as well?
I don't know, that's certainly something that we could discuss, and I certainly have the resources and the contact to be able to do that.
Great, and I know that the EpiPen is optional for staff to train on.
Right.
They would have to volunteer, but is there a way to
Well, we're gonna
encourage?
reach out to them.
Yeah, to
We're
encourage
not-
staff.
We're gonna reach out to them,
Okay.
but we can't force anybody to be trained if they are not.
With a goal of maybe someone per hallway at least who's available, who
Or
can do
what
it.
we're thinking in a grade or in a, specific, right.
That portion of the building.
Area. Definitely coaches, I mean, we've already discussed it, definitely coaches, I mean, that's not gonna be optional for them. It's something that
They'll be required to.
yeah, we're trying to require, yeah. No problem. Thank you.
We've also offered CPR and DPI training at each school, especially for staff who want to participate in that. Okay. Any other questions? I know my glasses on, so I can't see very well. All right, so 3.02, we have a CSIP summary. Sorry. No offense, he's just grabbed his phone with the station phone.
I'm just going to take a few minutes tonight to sort of summarize the CSIPs and look at some of the highlights and commonalities of the CSIP presentations, the 7 presentations that we saw over the last 2 months. This presentation will be available, it's in Word docs as a Google Doc. So it's not as an attachment. When you look at the main page, you see the link to it. And the reason for that is each of these pictures of the schools links to that school's presentation. So if you wanted to see the specific presentations, you just need to pick the school and you can go to each of them from here. And so it's specifically in Word docs that way, it's not essentially missing. So each of our 7 schools over the last 2 months shared their CSIP presentation. Each of these presentations talked about the school's goals with respect to literacy, mathematics, and social and emotional growth of students. And as I said, they can be accessed through that. They talked a lot about interventions. Here we see a smattering of the interventions that were spoken about. There are interventions with literacy and with mathematics. A number of these are vendor products, many of whose logos you see here. In addition, principals talked about efforts to target specific standards and to meet the individual needs of students. Many of the mechanisms for doing so are listed here: focus or expert groups, grade level action plans, student portfolios, examining current course structures such as the seminar program, and co-teaching expanded beyond the familiar partnership between a general education and a special education teacher to now include ENL teachers as co-teachers with general education teachers. Many of the presentations also included references to shifts we're seeing in the district. So in the 3 graphs here, we see some of the shifts that were alluded to. With respect to enrollment, we see over the last 3 years a dip in enrollment, which has been felt mostly in the elementary schools. With respect to our ENL population, that's our students for whom English is a new language, we see an increase this year, most notably that's being felt at the high school and in kindergarten across the district. I also want to note you see a slight dip from this year over last year. Our ENL population is one that continues to change throughout the year and tends to grow as the year goes on. We do anticipate another sort of wave of students coming in during the winter. It's a typical time between January and March. And so that number can still grow as the year goes on. And then we also see a steady increase over the last 3 years in the percent of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. This is a combination of both an increase in the number of students qualifying, but also a decrease in our enrollment. So the percentage grows even sometimes just if the number stays the same. We also heard mentioned in a number of the presentations about a shift in how we look at student attendance, particularly in a district like ours where attendance is so high, 96%, 97% attendance. It's easy to look at those numbers and think, oh great, we have great attendance, and move on. As we've looked deeper and the principals have looked deeper, we have seen though some patterns in terms of students with frequent absenteeism. Frequent is defined as 10 or more absences during the year, and chronic absenteeism, which is defined as 18 or more absences during the year. So if you recall, a number of the principals talked about specifically targeting those numbers, not just overall attendance numbers. We also heard some conversations about the shifts in curriculum and assessment. With respect to the high school, Mr. Green spoke about the preparation for the Common Core English Regents and Algebra 2 Regents exams, which our students will take for the first time this June, the Common Core versions of those exams. At the middle school and elementary schools, we heard about the shifts from using the New York State ELA and math assessments as the primary measure of student achievement. This year, measures of student achievement included goals which utilize the NWEA scores, Achieve 3000 Lexile scores, the DRA, which gives a student's reading level in the lower grades, and district common assessments. We also heard a lot about the social emotional growth of our students. Each of the school CSIPs included a component addressing social emotional growth. Here, if you look at this, it's called a Wordle, and a Wordle takes a body of text and essentially analyzes that text for the frequency of certain words used. So I went through all 7 CSIPs and I cut and pasted all of the text around the social emotional goals, and I put it into the Whirl tool, and this is what came out. So, not surprisingly, the focus of the CSIPs around social emotional growth was our students. That's what we're looking at. So we see the focus on students and efforts to reduce bullying, referrals, and absenteeism. In addition, there was a focus on recognition and building character, grit, and a growth mindset. Activities and interventions mentioned in this component included needs assessments around resilience, functions specifically for new students to the building or to the district, reducing discipline and bullying, particularly associated with lunch and recess, promoting a growth mindset, fostering student and teacher leadership, increasing attendance, and in so doing, decreasing frequent and chronic absenteeism. Those were a lot of the different things we heard mentioned from the different buildings. We also heard about some of the innovations and new opportunities in the district. Several principals spoke about book studies their faculties are involved in, and we look forward to seeing how this research will influence practice. In addition, not mentioned here, but PPS is sponsoring another book discussion for a number of interested staff around the idea of unpacking complexity in informational texts. We also heard mention of a number of STEM and STEAM activities, including the plans to create makerspaces at 2 of our elementary schools, expanding last year's Project Lead the Way pilot at Montebello to all of our elementary schools, including units in kindergarten, 1st grade, and 4th grade, the AP Computer Science course at the high school. And while it's not mentioned in the CSIPs, but it is closely related, I'd like to mention the Reach Foundation STEAM Expo, which is scheduled for March 6th. That will provide a wonderful opportunity to showcase what our students are doing in their classrooms related to STEAM. I have expanded STEM to include the arts with STEAM, and our art department recently participated in a STEAM workshop on the extended day, and we look forward to see how they bring art to this STEM, many of the STEM activities we already have in place. And I think, so I actually updated this presentation, but I neglected to just share that with Mr. Becker. Sorry about that. So, and I don't have it in front of me right now. I would love it. Thank you. And because when I went through this afternoon, I realized I didn't have a conclusion, and I said, that's not very good.
Tap the screen so it doesn't go to sleep.
And what I have on my concluding slide of my updated presentation is our school mission and the district mission and vision. And what I did is I highlighted, you can just go to the last page, that should do it. And what I did is I highlighted all of the words, the one before that, all of the words from the district mission and vision that I felt had been addressed through these CSIP plans. So it was incredible to me to see how many aspects of the district mission and vision the CSIP plans hit on. And so I wanted to conclude with that, and I thought that had a nice connection to why we're doing all of this.
Okay, any questions, Marlies?
Yes, I had sent out an email, I'm sorry I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I'm interested in, and I tried to compile it myself from these various CSIPs, but some CSIPs had the information and others did not. I'd like to see all the schools compared, one next to another in a table format, with the percentage of ENL students at that one school compared to the next, the percentage of the kids that need additional educational services at each school. So is there, X percentage at Connor and X percentage here, but free and reduced lunches at each one of those schools. Obviously, some of them are Title I, so we kind of have an idea where that would be highest. Then also, the other information I was trying to gather from the CSIPs, that some of them were there, some of them were not, was what were their goals for last year and whether they met them. So, I don't know if it's possible to summarize all that in one slide so we can kind of compare how the schools are doing, both with relation to each other, with relation to district, and also with state and county. Do you think that would be possible?
I can look into that. Some of that information is in other places. The comparisons to the county, I included in my assessment report in September. I don't include the state, to be honest. The comparisons to the state, we're high enough above the state that it doesn't tell us very much. And with the rate of opt-outs we had this year,
Sure.
it's, I don't know how valuable it is. Within the county, yes,
Okay.
and that was shared.
Yeah,
I
some
think-
schools had it, some
Right.
schools had
And
that,
I
some
have-
schools didn't. So I was just trying to summarize everything, and so I have it straight in my head, what are the particular demographics, what are the particular needs, and how does one school, especially the elementary schools where the demographics can vary significantly, I think it's useful to know, well, this school has a higher percentage of young adults, and this school has a higher percentage of children that require additional educational needs, and I think that would be useful kind of as a summary. Cool, thank you.
I just had a comment almost along the same line. In listening to the CSIP reports, which were all very engaging and very valuable information, I just felt that maybe, I don't know if they're given a common ground of certain things they have to cover in these reports, because there was a huge variation. And while variation is great because each building has its own flair and personality, et cetera, and character, and I love seeing that. So not to make them all photocopy or, a rubber stamp to each other, but perhaps some of those statistics or some of those graphs need to be a common theme in some of them, so that we know to compare apples and apples pretty much, or to understand how they compare to each other, which I think is very important as well.
Anybody else? I just have one comment or question. The first slide where you had the pictures of all the schools, you said you click on the school, it's just the CSIP presentation, right? Because the CSIPs themselves are rather lengthy.
Correct.
The presentations are an abbreviated version of the big picture.
Yes.
Or the big presentation. Right.
Yes, it
So-
links to the presentation.
Okay, so there's a lot more that goes into
Yes.
what they've done than really just what they presented clearly. Okay,
That's a snapshot
right.
of the system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Adams, I'll refer to you from 5.01 framework for replacement of Suffolk Middle School fields and update. Okay, sorry for the last minute on the page, but it's
The discussion item and discussion items are typically reserved for the board, and so I'll just start with some comments, and then hopefully the board will engage in discussion and provide some direction as to where we need to move. The title is Framework for Replacement of the Suffolk Middle School's Fields, and obviously the turf fields need to be replaced. And along those lines, we had discussed the framework back in June and touched upon it just briefly in July. And the report, oops. Sorry, Kelly. The final report that will go to the board, based upon the framework we discussed back in June, will cover the health and safety concerns that have, I do that? Okay. It'll cover the health and safety concerns that have been raised by the board and by the community and by studies. It will take a look at the synthetic turf analysis, including costs, natural grass analysis, including costs, input from presentations by experts, if the board so chooses, and input from stakeholder feedback. So that's what the end product will look like, but where we are is, I'm not sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
Make it straight. Okay. All right, so we don't have the largest part of the screen, but hopefully everybody can see that. There's been discussion, and a number of people have asked me, parents, some staff members, in terms of kind of like an expert to weigh in on whether, we should go with grass fields or with synthetic fields. And the board actually has a policy, 2280, which talks about the selection of qualified consultants. So looking at the December 15th meeting so that we can meet our timeline of getting the report to the board by March 1st, and I'll explain why March 1st is an important date. For December 15th, I would need some direction from the board or some decisions. Do you want to take a look at expert type testimony, pro and con, or just pro or just con? And then within the policy, it does talk about duties specified by the Board of Education. What is it you would want, if you so choose or chose to go with consultants or experts, what is it you want them to address would be spelled out. And then do you want a public presentation or written submission? The written submission is valuable, but I think the public presentation to the board would be more valuable in that you can ask questions and drill down to find out what their positions are. And then secondly what other mechanisms for stakeholder and constituent feedback? I've listed 2 options, there are certainly more, but a dedicated email and then a survey instrument. The survey instrument, not to be too fancy with it, but just the nice thing about a survey instrument, if we use a Google platform, is if people respond to the survey using Google, we're able to organize the data that we receive from people, and it makes it easier to, in a qualitative way, kind of group responses and find out what the common themes or common concerns are. The dedicated email is somewhat similar to what we do with board questions during board season. People can submit questions to that dedicated spot. So that's one option, doing surveys the other. And some people aren't bashful about addressing the board at the podium, but then there are some people that want to be able to address the board in different ways. And it doesn't have to be limited to the electronic version. People with sending in letters or emails, just so that there's a way to collect that information in a systematic way so that people's voices are heard, and then that becomes, the themes will become part of the ending report. But this is what I'm hoping, why this, we had to have this as a discussion item so that the board can, give me some guidance or kick it around tonight, and then by the 15th have some decisions made on this, because contacting the consultants / experts and trying to arrange for them to be at the board meeting in January or February, I would need to do that fairly quickly. Because looking at January and February, the January board meeting is about mid-month, but the February board meeting, I believe, is February 2nd. So it's early in the month. So if we're going to have the expert input / presentations, we need to contact the experts right away. The stakeholder input opportunities, if we go the dedicated email survey or any other mechanism, then we need to be able to collect that information in January, not through the end of February, because the first board meeting in March is March 1st, and that's why the deadline would be March the 1st. We would need to cut it off sometime in February so as to include it in the report. The research has been ongoing, probably between 8 and 12 to 14 hours a month, going through research and trying to assemble the report. That will be ongoing during January and February. And then the March 1st deadline, which is what I started with, those 5 principal areas will be included in the report. And why March 1st is kind of a cutoff, the budget vote is on May 19th. To have a ballot proposal you need to back that up 45 days. The first board meeting in April is April 5th. 45 days back from May 19th pushes it to April 4th. So it's, you know, we could push the board meeting back to April 4th, but getting you the report by March the 1st, you have almost a month if you need to make decisions as to what direction the board wants to go so that the ballot can be properly put together in a timely fashion. But this is really about process and what you all want to do, and it's under discussion, so be very interested to hear what the board has to say.
I'll just start off, I think a public presentation to us, with the public here would be a great way to go. Just so we can ask questions, and I agree. I'm sure they can bring written documentation for us, but I think having them here will be critical to be able to address our concerns and the public's concerns. And I think number of consultants, I think we could sit here, you can go on forever with the amount of people that want to get up and talk about this and have some knowledge about this, I would guess. I would say one for turf and one for grass, I would guess, would suffice. That's just my personal opinion. I don't have to by far on it. I've always been in favor of turf. I've played on turf, I've coached on turf. But I'm willing, obviously, to everyone else with an open mind to hear everything at this point. So that's just me personally at this point, what I think.
Teresa, do you want?
I'm processing and thinking, so when you say, one consultant pro turf, pro non-turf or alternative fields, I guess you would say, I apologize. You know, so I know that they're also, what kind of consultant is that? You know, so it needs to be, it's very hard to find people that are going to be objective. They're going to be on one side or the other. Is it health professional? Is it non-health professional? Is it, you know, so there are different ways to look at this. So I'm just processing what we might need to be able to satisfy the public, ourselves, questions that we may have. So I'm still processing.
Do you want to go?
No, I'm here. Okay, I have a few concerns about the current report that I need to for after attention, so. My first concern is that we didn't know what we're brainstorming today because this was not posted, so otherwise we would have given it some thought in advance. So I would appreciate it, especially on something that critical, that we know ahead what items we're going to be addressing.
We've talked about it before, we talked about it in the presentation. Numerous, sometime in the past, regarding, having somebody.
No, but
present something.
that's not the only item we're discussing here. We're discussing some serious decisions that Dr. Adams would like our feedback or our opinion on. So I would have had my ideas and thoughts more organized and some responses to you had I seen this then. So that's my first concern. Second, in line with what Teresa just mentioned, who qualifies to be the expert that we would invite for a presentation is very, very critical, and they cannot have any sort of affiliation with the industry. Obviously, that's a given. I don't see any disadvantage to having health professionals because they seem to be the unbiased scientists who will say it as it is, who have no stake or no risk to take financially or in any other way. So I would tend to believe a scientist, a physician, and a medical scientist, a public health expert who is not affiliated with the industry, who has done enough work and has the credentials to back up their opinion. And as far as written or personal testimonials, we received written testimonials that have been read at board of ed meetings in the past when we were going through the process of making a decision. Some of those people who sent those testimonials would be willing to come and talk in front of the board given that we give them enough notice and can arrange schedule-wise, as they're obviously in other engagements all over the country. It's a hot topic, it's all over the media. We're not the only district that's battling with this, but we're concerned about our district and our kids, so that's our priority right here. But those people are engaged all over the country, basically, let alone the world. I had heard Dr. Adams in the July meeting where he touched on this topic, mention a community forum, not a Board of Ed meeting. A community forum might give us a little more flexibility with dates, since our Board of Ed dates are sort of written in stone, and might limit us where that expert speaker that we would love to hear from may not be available. So I'm just putting it back to what you had suggested initially in terms of involving a bigger community forum that allows actually people to get up and ask questions a lot more than a Board of Ed meeting would. I kind of tend to prefer that, where Board of Ed members are present, but the community is also asking questions and giving feedback. Selecting the expert has to be definitely a very serious and very strict process. I think we should all weigh in on who those experts are and sort of know who's going to talk to our community. I also have heard Dr. Adams mention that members of our administration were visiting the natural turf districts that had had a good experience with that, namely in Long Island, East Meadow, and a couple of others actually that I've learned about since. I don't know if that took place. I'd love and a little update on that, please. When putting together a report, I'd love to see what the sources were for the information. When I do something medical, I like to see what the source was. It's very important where we get our information from.
And Amani, if I can just touch on that, we're going to try to set up the report where there'll be links within the document so that you can go right to the source information. I believe that we can do that, so people, and then there'll be the bibliography that they can just open it up and
Right, but
bibliography.
you're talking about putting that together and submitting it to the board. I mean, do we have a chance to work on it? I just want to make sure all points of view are represented.
Sure.
And that, other resources that we have, been able to access since the conversation started are not neglected or ignored. I feel that's very important that we show all aspects of this
Absolutely.
situation, because it's a major decision that affects the health of our children that we are concerned about. Even if we are weighing synthetic and natural, there's a variety of synthetics, there's a variety of chemicals in them. We need the experts who can actually break that down in layman terms so that our community is well educated about this and is making an educated decision. I know time is of essence. We're back to battling with, vote time in May, but it seems like I don't know how much progress we've made since last May. It seems like we kind of stalled. So I don't want to see this rushed at this point in spite of everything. So that's another concern. It's not a process to be rushed. It's definitely a process to be very extremely thorough and extremely dedicated to. I feel, collecting information from all sources is very important. Hearing everyone's opinion, as you mentioned, is critical. It's not just about athletic performance. I'm a big, advocate of sports in our district, as you know very well through my personal experience with my children. But health comes first before athletic performance, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. As far as getting feedback from the community, I don't see a problem with obtaining feedback in all ways, encouraging people to do everything as opposed to choosing. But I think the community forum is more significant than a Board of Ed presentation at this point. Thanks.
Great.
No, I think it's kind of like a debate the cake, and you take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that. I think one of the advantages sitting downwind here is
Depends on which end it starts, yeah.
Yeah. No, I certainly, and I think that this is healthy, but I just want to make sure that the board is all in agreement that we do want to put this on the budget vote, so that, if we've got some people that don't feel that they want to do that, let's talk about that, because that's got to be a definitive. We don't want to get involved in this and then realize that, we're running against the clock or something. you know, I think that this kind of has dragged on enough, and that we've got to, you know, for the sake of health, well-being, and for this athletic program itself, we've got enough, you know, going forward. Now, having said that, as long as we're in agreement with that, I think that we do have to vet this very well. I mean, not only is it a health and safety issue, it's also a major expense, and it's an investment in the district itself. So we've got to, you know, and here's an opportunity for us to do it right with the information that we have. So, you know, I certainly think, and I've always been a big proponent of hearing what the community has to say. So whatever forum we choose, I'm certainly in favor of that. I agree with Dr. Adams that there are people that also feel reluctant about coming to a podium, coming to a public meeting, but may have valuable insight, and if they can share that in an email or through some type of a survey, that's fine. That's as well. And I think it's important for the board to sit and listen to experts on all sides. You know, I haven't made up my mind whether or not to go for natural or go, but here's an opportunity for you to make that decision and an informed decision.
And just going back, you know, I want to make it clear to our community, are we still considered foam rubber or are we considered other synthetic dirt? That needs to be very clear from the start as we go into that conversation.
Okay, Marlene?
I too would have wished that I would have seen this framework before, so I could have given a little bit more thought. But here I am on the spot telling you kind of my ideas. So first of all, I think that the concern is health. I mean, we're not having this conversation because we don't like the color of the field. We're having this conversation because we're concerned about the health and safety impact of synthetic turf on our kids. So the number one expert that has to be there, and it is a health expert. I think that we cannot do without a health expert, and it needs to be somebody who is, research is independently funded, not somebody whose research is funded by the tire industry, the recycling industry, this and that. So we have to be very careful in that expert which is selected, looking at their credentials. But the number one expert that needs to be present is a health expert, because we're not having this conversation for really any other reason than what are the long-term health impacts. The second thing that I want to say is the reason why it didn't pass last year is because the community, at least my interpretation of the reason why it didn't pass last year, because the community did not know exactly what they were voting on. There was a lot of ambiguity. So one of the first things that needs to happen in whatever form we decide, and I do believe that a community forum is the appropriate way to go, is that questions are answered. So there needs to be a way to have a two-way feedback. So people ask questions and they get answered, and not necessarily by us, but by these experts. So they need to have the opportunity to ask these people that have expertise in this matter their questions, because that's how the community is going to feel more comfortable in knowing what they're voting for and what they're potentially exposing their kids to. The second thing that I want to say is, I see on March 1st here, it says synthetic turf analysis, including costs, is to be done before March 1st. On June 2nd, it said that we were interviewing 2 firms the week of June 8th, 2015, for testing of existing fields. Did that happen?
No, oh, well, the interviews did, yes.
And what was the result of those interviews?
They were interviewed.
And we decided not to move forward with testing, because the summer is the best time to test. So if we're going to go testing the fields in the winter, that's not going to yield us the information that we need.
We talked about that, we talked about testing post that, and we were not testing the fields at that time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I remember it coming up, and then the decision was made to not test, but I don't remember the exact I don't know if you recall.
I'd have to go back and take a look at the decisions that were made.
Because one of the things is, also assessing the safety of the field that's there now. That also needs to come into the conversation. And I don't know that, testing in the winter, you need to test these fields when the temperature rises, so it needs to happen over the summer. So I'm just, to my understanding, so they were not tested over the summer, because I've never seen any results of that. Okay, so then we have to really, in our analysis, and potentially with a consultant, discuss what we're going to gain from testing these fields in the winter, as opposed to in the summer, under the conditions where they would need to be tested.
All right, if we, I don't want to take you 3 minutes, but if we go along the lines of replacing
I have more than 3
fields,
minutes.
then we go along the lines of replacing fields, then we think why testing?
And that's been a question I asked in the past, what's the value of spending the funds if we're replacing them no matter what? And at this point, we missed the summer, which was, we were going to test, we needed to test in the summer.
I think that was it, and it's why it's the right replacement now, because we know we need to replace it, but why spend the money and do the analysis if we're moving this direction, it's just.
I'm
one
only year
year.
bringing it up because it's written here,
Right.
needing to be done before March first,
Yeah.
and so I'm questioning,
Read that.
I don't think it's the appropriate time to test them. So I think it is going to be tough to find experts that are not in some way, shape, or form connected with the tire industry, and that's going to be difficult, and we have to really do our due diligence. And as far as how to get input from the community, you know, surveys can be designed in one way or designed in another way to get the results that you want to get. So I think that we can do a survey, but we can't rely only on those results. I think we should also have an opportunity for people to A, ask questions, but B, again, really importantly, get answers. Let me just make sure there was anything else that I missed here. Oh, the report that we're setting up. So this final report that we're going to generate, I'm a little uncomfortable putting my name to something with a report that has medical information on there that has not been thoroughly evaluated, approved by a medical professional with expertise in the field. So this is my own personal opinion. I don't know that we have that expertise on this board, regardless of the fact that Amani has a degree in public health and I'm a physician, and you guys are experts in sports and stuff, which I'm not. But I don't know that we have that expertise to put such an incredible document together. And also legally, does that have implications then for us? I don't know. So I think that, I'm not exactly sure what we mean by a report with links and all that sort of thing, and how that would transpire. So those are just some of my off-the-cuff thoughts. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the page, the second page that says synthetic turf analysis, I don't think, it wasn't meant analysis of the field, it was just with all the data and information that's been collected. It wasn't for actual testing.
Okay, so that does not is testing.
Right.
Analyzing options and the cost, is that the accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna test it again. This is really good.
Maureen.
Yes. I agree with trying to find a health expert in getting us through this, but the other consultants you are going to need them to come from the contractors and the suppliers to sit down and go over what exactly are the choices, what the prices are, what the timeline is. So we're going to need those also within that thing. So for natural turf, for the synthetic turf, then have somebody, and I know it's going to be hard to find somebody so independent, but to try and find somebody that maybe we can attempt to vet well and see that they're as independent as I guess you can be, to give us the options for both sides. You know, this reason, that reason, for the grass and for the turf. As far as the stakeholder feedback, I'd like to see, I think email and survey is good, but I'd like to have that information before the people come to present so that they can have those questions, so that they can build that into their presentation. When they do present, I'd like to have the floor open to the public so that they can ask questions as well. We have a lot of very knowledgeable public people out there who have some good questions that I think would be helpful to us.
And just to add to that, not to interrupt you,
But those questions that we might get earlier might direct us to other people that we didn't consider as part of giving us feedback that we have to go to gain information from. So, such as longevity of natural grass or restrictions or, things that might come up that we haven't already thought of or talked about, but that we can get answers or call somebody else that maybe wasn't on our radar. So I didn't want to interrupt.
Just with respect to determination of the number of consultants, you don't want to dilute the process and you hear from one consultant after another to another, you're going to get engaged and so you need to focus it. And I think when we're talking about consultants, we're talking about the toxicologist, the medical professional, more so than when we've done research about how much it would cost. We've spoken to the architects, we've spoken with companies, we've spoken, to get all that money, to get all that, those issues resolved with respect to how much it will cost. I think there may have been actually a presentation way back when with respect to the cost of each different type of field. So I think the focus on, with respect to this first part was, when we're talking about the number of consultants, it's really talking about the professional to say, okay, this is my professional opinion on turf field, this is my professional opinion on crumb rubber and virgin rubber and natural grass, whatever the case may be. So I think that would be more the focus for that first part. We have to hire those consultants. These other consultants, the architect, we don't hire them. He tells us what it's going to cost for him to do it. Whoever's going to put the field in, whatever substance we use, they will tell us, this is what it's going to cost. There's no hiring. So I think at this point, pursuant to the policy mentioned, is we have to determine the consultants that we will hire to do the presentation. The second thing, I think it's important that we do make sure it's clear and don't dilute it too many. I think one on each side. I don't want to even say each side. Just two different opposing views as to what we can do, shouldn't do. I think the public presentation or written submission, I think it's not, written submission is great, it's on paper. I think it's better to be presented at a board meeting in public. I think if we do the surveys and the dedicated email, I'm not quite sure how all that process would work. With those we can get questions and we can, we have different views amongst the seven of us that pretty much cover the gamut with respect to this issue, I think. And it's, the public is well represented, that's why they put us up here. So, I think it just becomes more focused and not limited in that sense. And with respect to the survey or the email, and both, whatever we can do to get the most information. I would like to hear from people who won't get up, and there's people who will not get up and talk and say anything about, I love crumb rubber, on the field. Because they're, for whatever reason, they won't get up and say it. So, I think it's important to hear it through an email or through a survey. What we have to resolve now, for timing purposes is, and just the way the procedure works, is to put it on the agenda for next meeting, which is the December 15th meeting, as an action item, as this is what we will resolve, and also to give administration at least a heads up as to, okay, which, how do we want to proceed with this. I know there's been a lot of work with respect to researching the different issues with respect to whether it's crumb rubber, virgin rubber, coconut husk, cork, and natural grass. So a lot of that work's already been done. A lot of the money with respect to that has already been done, despite Kelly leaving. So I think we need to focus now, for resolve between the seven of us, at least by somewhat of a majority. Let's focus. Do we want 2 consultants? We can't, and I'm talking about just the medical consultants, not the consultants for who's going to build the field.
With regards to policy 2280, so do we have to put this out for a bid? Is that what you're saying? So we come up with what are the qualifications that we want to see in these experts, and then it goes out for a bid, and then we have no control over who, because we have to take the lowest bidder, right?
There are health experts that do not charge anything.
It depends on the money, depends on how much it is.
Right, so we may not have a choice over which consultant we get.
Well, we have a choice over the kind of consultant we want.
Right, but we may say we want health, or we may say we want someone who represents synthetic turf, and then here we go, we get, or whatever, do you know what I'm saying? Like, do we have that much control?
If the consultant costs for one person exceeds $35,000, then it has to go out for bid. But if it's below that, it
Then
does
we
not.
have to pay.
Correct. Correct.
My question is, Dr. Adams, do you already have a public health consultant that would, or speaker that you have in mind for this presentation? Because if you don't, I have the contacts lined up.
A couple of things, I'll address that in just a second, Monty. what I was wondering is, there were a lot of things shared this evening, and I appreciate that. And I was wondering if by Thursday or Friday of this week, if Angela and I kind of try to summarize or group this together and send it out to the board and refine it a little bit to help us formulate what you want to vote on December 15th. But just to try to capture what you all are saying as best we can, and then you refine it, you send it back and forth. It'd be nice to put a Google Doc, and then we can just all edit it dynamically. But Amani, back to your question, I believe early on in the process, somebody came and spoke over at the Village of Airmont, City Hall, or Village Hall. I don't know if that's the person you have in mind, but
The
I did
head
not
of, the
have.
head of the Pediatric Public Health Association, the American Academy of Pediatric Public Health, is willing to speak to our community.
I have no experts from the healthcare side.
I'd be
or
happy
from
to
the other
connect
side.
with
You-
him, and
If you could give me a call and we could
is that okay
set
with
that up.
the board? The board needs to approve that before I do that.
Well, I think, provide the information, and then if Dr. Adams can even shoot out the resume of whoever we're considering at that point, I think, I'm sorry. cut you off.
I thought I heard you all say
Very well.
is that it's key to have the qualifications agreed to. And so if the board can agree to the qualifications and then the name is forwarded, then we can compare the name with the qualifications. So I think it would be critical for you all to decide the qualifications.
So I think for a health expert, they need to have training in public health. Preferably somebody who has experience in environmental health, especially pediatric environmental health. Would be two important qualifications, someone who is very familiar with the issue. I'm not gonna do anything else.
Familiar with this particular topic because there are environmental scientists, physicians/public health experts who did not specifically work with turf. Their expertise is maybe cell phone, risk or another area of environmental exposure. So we need someone who has enough work in that area and will give us the unbiased scientific opinion as to what the exposures are.
Yes.
Not just exposures to rubber pump, because I'm like hearing and undermining the feeling that we're beyond that, I hope, but the other synthetic turf fields, how do we compare them? How do we make an educated comparison and find if one of them may be a good option for our children here, or if the natural way to go? But to make that distinction, it needs to be someone who's worked with, familiar with all the chemicals in all the different types of turf.
Anybody else?
I just have one question, and I know when you guys were starting to do some research, you had done quite a bit kind of outside, obviously, the field, no pun intended. But one of the things, did you include the possibility, and I think it would behoove us, to speak to other districts that have gone through this process now and are
Yes.
getting ready to, okay.
Yes, so they would have.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about the possibility, of maybe even availing ourselves of the National School Board Association, because obviously this isn't just local to Rockland County, but goes through the state.
And I'm just concerned about getting price change, comparisons from one supplier. I know the supplier is on the state list, which would save time in terms of getting bids. I realize, again, time is of essence. On the other hand, I feel like if it's going to save our district a pronounced amount of money to go with another supplier, it might require a different process, but it's well worth it to save tax dollars as well.
Sure.
So I really, really appeal to our administration to research prices to other providers that may or may not be on the state list.
Yes.
Another possible consultant is Ellen Jaffe. She sent us that letter, and she's right on the legislative environmental committee, and they are actually actively looking at the synthetic turf issue. So
She might be a resource to give us names.
but she would certainly give us an interesting viewpoint on what they're thinking of the legislature.
I meet with her tomorrow afternoon, and I'll be glad to ask her.
I'd love for the community to hear from those who have had a good experience with natural turf, and also, besides administrators visiting their district, come and show us pictures.
grass?
turf, yeah. So I'd love for our community to have that feedback as well and to be part of that conversation. Ask them the questions, what do you use for pesticides? We're concerned about the chemicals you use to maintain grass. How do you deal rainy day games? I'd love that to come to us as well.
And use of fields too, when we're talking about that, because, you know, what is the limit to use of fields?
Correct.
But that was my other,
We do have grass fields that we still use during rainy days. We're not allowed to use most pesticides. So
Right.
we have that, our own experience. We don't necessarily need to run out and.
But there's been complaints about the quality, the condition of our grass fields. It'd be great to get somebody's.
And we're very restricted on what we can use.
Right, there are laws that govern that. But if the district had a really good experience with what we were told, NFL quality fields that they were able to maintain, let's hear their story as well and ask them the question.
In North Rockland, it's a beautiful baseball field, but nobody's allowed to use it. They use it for 9 games a year. That's it.
Yeah, but that's not the case in East Meadow, so I'd love to hear from them if possible.
It's great.
So I just want to go back to our last, what we're talking about as far as having, let's say, 2 experts. That's even more important, Dr. Adams, your timeline ties into getting community feedback first. But it's so important to get that, because if those 2 experts can't answer every question that comes up, we need to be able to funnel those through people, maybe people in different districts or other experts, and we need to be able to have those answers, because if they're coming up there, even if we have a community forum, whatever way we decide to present this, there are gonna be those questions and more. So we at least wanna get a head start on being able to present as much information as we can.
Okay, so let's get some clarity here then. With respect to a dedicated email on the survey, there needs to be no vote necessarily with respect to that, but we're gonna go with doing both of those, if that's.
Both plus any
Plus any
written information.
Exactly. Okay, with respect to the consultants, 2 consultants, differing opinions, I would recommend that, Dr. Adams forwards the curriculum vitae, the resume, whatever the case might be, with respect to, who the people are, and if he has an understanding of the background that you're looking for, we're looking for, with respect to their expertise. Forward that, and then take a quick look at that as soon as possible, and proceed from there. So I think before that, we just keep talking about what we want.
Are we talking about a Board of Ed meeting or a community forum? That's important too.
That doesn't have to be decided right now, however, I don't believe, because we haven't hired anybody yet.
Dates
I think.
will matter. And invite
Well, the
someone.
things, we can have a board meeting at any date, and we just gotta get 7 of us together, so.
But during the board meeting, the community can ask questions, technically.
No, but hopefully we'll have some questions from the community and the processes.
That's why I would prefer a community forum.
I'd like it to be open.
Yeah, because sometimes you think of a question, like, because someone else asked it, and all of a sudden you have any questions, so I think there should be plenty of.
I think we like to arrange it in a way that it is more focused on board meeting.
Should we take home? Community forum where people can ask questions or?
We're not voting today, we're just discussing.
No,
it.
let's
So,
discuss it.
let's get some information from Dr. Adams, and we'll, between now and the next meeting, hopefully. And, if we have to put it on the next meeting as an action item, and then just have another discussion at that point, we can all do that and modify whatever motion's on there. So, everybody okay with that? Okay.
The policy does not reference community forum, it says public hearing, and it's 2390 if you want to check that out.
Public hearing, will public hearing allow interaction?
I believe so. It's 2390. I'll have to double check that.
Typically,
This year, we've had public hearings, and that's what we've done.
there's certain notice requirements.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah. We're gonna go read the next item now. Okay, public participation, anything else, I'm sorry?
We will try to,
Public hearing here, it says people have 3 minutes, it's the same thing, they have 3 minutes to talk. I don't know, I think it needs to be 2 minutes straight. Are the options of public hearing or board of ed meeting?
that's what I found in the policy manual, but I believe that you can suspend the rules to modify that.
could be a community type of event that's not governed by Board of Ed policy, correct?
It's still governed by policy, but you can suspend the policy for that specific event. But yes.
Because
Maybe supermajority. We'll get back to it. Yeah, I think it's just super. But, okay. Public participation. This is public participation with respect to any district business. Public participation, this portion of the meeting will last no longer than 30 minutes. If you would like to speak, please approach the podium. State your name, address, school affiliation, organization. Please select one single spokesperson. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please address your remarks to the president of the board. Again, this is a business meeting of the board held in public, not a public meeting, so we've been actually talking about nothing. So there is no back and forth, but I know nobody really leaves their email addresses, even though I've asked. But try to, if you want a response or what have you, leave your email address. I'll be here after the meeting signing some papers. I'm here all night, so, but again, we're all listening. We want to hear what you have to say. Appreciate the respect and candor of people when they come up to the podium. And I don't want to cut any speaker off, but just remember our policies with respect to 1400, 1230, and 3240 in general. Please refrain from comments about specific personnel, employees, or students. That being said.
Melissa Hess-Gilardi. I have 2 children in Cherry Lane and 1 in Suffern High School. Just on the topic of having the community forum, I came here tonight specifically to hear this conversation about turf. Glad to see that we're moving the balls, hoping we'd be a little farther along than we are. But I would really encourage you all to please consider having it in some kind of format where the community gets to ask and have questions actually answered, and not ask us to submit questions in advance. We're not experts in environmental science or public health or artificial turf or anything else, but we do have ears. And we can listen and we can understand things, and when we don't understand, we can ask questions and have the answers given to us in that moment. But asking us to submit questions about something we don't really know that much about in advance doesn't feel productive to me. So I would ask you to please consider allowing the public to have a back and forth on this topic when the time comes.
Very good, thank you.
Linda Eisen, I have a daughter who's a senior at the high school. I live in Airmont. Just a couple of things. One is that I'm a little concerned about the budget process going forward with Mr. Siebert moving on. And so my guess is he puts a lot of work into preparing all the budget workshops. So I think I would just, and I'm sure the public would also like to hear from the board administration how that process goes forward, since we're very close to approaching the budget time of year when all of that gets done. And just the other thing that I'd like to say about the turf, I'm a little disappointed to hear that the fields were not tested. The reason that we are going through such a careful process is because of the health risks, and our fields are probably at their most dangerous, or were this summer at their most dangerous. They are old, they need to be replaced, everything's disintegrating. I have a house completely covered with turds from my daughter on the fields for marching band, and the marching band was on those fields in August this summer at the hottest part of the year, and I really was concerned about whether it was going to be safe for them to be out there. They do exercises out there, they're face down in that turf doing push-ups, and I really would have liked the reassurance of hearing that it really was safe for my child to be out there before she was in 90+ degree days.
Hear me okay? My name is John Martin. I live in Montebello, class of '77.
Two daughters went through the school system, so first off, thank you very much for the great job you guys did. I'm very passionate on the field situation, like a lot of people. I would have hoped we were further along. I get, there's always priorities that you have to deal with. I'd ask you to narrow your lens in your analysis, because you can go off and you can analyze this until you blue in the face. I'm not a health expert, I'm not a turf expert, although I run a soccer club. We're on your fields 30 to 40 hours a week. So I'm well familiar with the conditions of the field, both turf and grass. They're both in tough shape. So as you're looking at whether you're going to go turf or you're going to go grass, keep in mind, and this is not trying to be bad to anybody, but we don't do a good job of maintaining grass right now. So should we decide that grass is a better option, we need to definitely look at that maintenance has to become a high priority. To that end, I had the opportunity, I hope the board doesn't mind, I called the field person in East Meadow. Lovely gentleman. I would definitely invite and tell you, have him come out. He called me right before the Thanksgiving holiday while he was on vacation. And he knew I was just a parent. I told him I'm not affiliated with the school board at all. How am I doing on time?
Doing 9.5.
All right. He will tell you, and they have high-use grass, okay? The single biggest success of their high-use grass is high maintenance, and it is very high. So nothing like we in the school district have seen. So while grass is a very viable option, and a lot of people may find that to be shocking coming out of me, it is a very viable option, but it comes with a high cost associated with it. Second part about this with regards to the turf and the toxicity around it is, I don't think you're going to find any study or any health professional that's going to conclusively say to you the fields are not safe. They're going to state to you numbers and things, but they're not going to end the bottom line say turf is not safe. So the question I think we have to come to is, one, if we do turf, how do we make it as safe as possible? And if we do grass, how do we make grass work given our constituents' use of the field? It would be a tragedy if you went to a grass solution and in turn said, we have to limit use. I will tell you, I represent 1,200 families, that they will come out of their trees. So whatever solution we come to, and it has to, no, it's okay. It has to maintain what we have in terms of usage and the long-term viability. Thank you.
And I'm also a mother in the district and a teacher at Suffolk Middle School. I just have a quick suggestion. We have 2 times for public participation. One is before action items and one is now toward the end of the meeting. A lot of times the public participation before action items does not get used. A lot of people don't get up to speak during that time, although you do allot 30 minutes for it. So, and maybe not on a meeting like this, but last time there were a lot of people here. I propose that whatever does not get used before action items might be moved, that time might be moved to this part of the meeting where people want to get up and discuss and say their piece. Because it's still, either way, it's still an hour that you get to sit and listen. So, thank you very much.
Any further comments? Okay, this time I'll close the public participation portion of the meeting. What I did at the last meeting, I did extend the 30 minutes because anybody did want to speak. When I try to do it, nobody's keeping in mind my bedtime. Are there any other comments superintendent comments, certainly.
No.
No, I don't think we have, but I thank the people who spoke about that.